but it's not yet. Give me a week on tour and it'll be second nature. But this is a story very close to my heart because it is loosely based on my best friends and I at two different points in our lives, in our late 20s, living in San Francisco, living our best single lives, starting our professional careers, and trying to take the world by storm, yeah. And then fast forward to our late 40s and 50s, where we're just tired. And saying yes has become toxic, and everything feels like so much. And yet we still have each other. And so really it's a story about friendship. And how we, especially women, just rely on each other to even get through the week, get through the day.
And it is so good, Gretchen.
Oh,
I love it. I've loved all your books, but I think this one is my favorite of them. And I know this is a really unfair question. It was later on my list, but I'm just feeling the mood right now. Would you say that it's your favorite? Do you have a favorite book? Would you rank them?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, it's definitely closest in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Yeah, to who? Yeah.
Well, it feels like you.
Does it?
It does. It feels like you. And I have to say, the book has framed around the year of no. And I wanted to know, because the ladies are tired, right? So they have to say no. And I wanted to know if you had read the memoir Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes.
I had.
And to see if this was a reaction in some way to the Year of Yes. So was it a political statement, Gretchen?
Surely a political statement. No, but I remember reading the Year of Yes. It's by Shonda Rhimes, who is the producer extraordinaire, did Grey's Anatomy and everything, and I read that book and just felt tired. Like, all respect to her, but I read it and thought, I just felt bad about myself and tired.
Well, the thing
about in a way, this is my answer.
And the thing about Shonda is, her deal was I'm going to say yes, but the offers were will you host the Oscars? Not will you bring cupcakes to the bake sale?
I think the opening story is her you're really debating whether she was going to do something for President Obama or not. And I'm it's really well written, though. I mean, all respect. But
that's how I felt.
I mean, if she wanted to produce this as a movie, I wouldn't say no.
We'll see. Okay, you mentioned that the women in the book have been friends for decades. And I love books about women friends. But I wanted to know, what drew you to write this book specifically? Are these real people in the book? And why now? Why these friends?
Yeah. They are real people in the book. There are 4 best friends in the book. One is named Fern, and she is a writer with 3 children and a really nice husband. I don't know who that reminds you of. One is named Andy, and she is a human rights attorney, and overworked and feels as if she has to solve the world's problems. One is named Carolina, and she is an executive in Silicon Valley and exhausts herself and then tries to exercise her stress away so that all she ends up doing all day long is crying. And then the 4th friend, it is really a combination of people. So Andy, the attorney, is inspired by one of my dearest best friends named Bethany, who is actually going to be on stage with me in San Diego in 2 days at my event in San Diego. Yes, that'll be fantastic. And then Carolina is loosely based on a dear friend of mine named Renee, who is going to be on stage with me in Berkeley on Friday. If you have any friends in California, please send them to my events. And there's cards on the table with the times and dates. And yeah, one of the weird things about writing this book was trying to separate the real people from the fictional characters. Because as much as they inspired the characters, they are not the characters. And the story arcs are not necessarily the same as their family arcs. But I did get a lot of permission for the real things that I put in the book, because there's a lot of real stuff in the book. Yeah. But why now? I guess we did have a year. late in our 20s. We all lived in San Francisco. We were all single at the same time. We were all raising hell at the same time. And we did have a year where we decided, the three of us, to just take the world by storm and go for it. Yeah. We did not call it the Year of Yes. We called it Kiss Fest 1998. But
Could you write your next book and title it Kiss Fest 1998? I think that'd be perfect.
I actually pitched that as a title, and my editor was like, no. She's like, you don't write romance. And I'm like, well,
I could.
I could.
Yeah, well, you brought up getting permission from your friends, which is one of my questions. This book, and Fern in the book, there's a couple of things I want to ask about this, actually. The first is Fern is an author, and she writes essays about her real-life friends. And you included the essays that she had written back then in the book, which I loved. So maybe first, do you want to talk about like the idea of including Fern's writing in the book and what it was like to actually write those essays?
Yeah, I have, even before I wrote fiction, I loved, one of my favorite classes at St. Olaf was expository writing. So, creative nonfiction. And I grew up in a family that created a lot of stories, real life stories. And so I found that inspiring. I always loved writing it. But, and so it was a natural transition. In this book, I was trying to figure out how was I going to split the time frame? What was a good mechanism for splitting the time frame so I wasn't constantly jumping back and forth in time? Because that tends to confuse readers. And so, since Fern was a writer anyway, I thought, oh, this could be a great mechanism. So it was purely convenience.
Did the voice come easily to you? Is it your voice that's Fern?
Probably.
Okay. And I also wondered, I don't know if you've read Evergreen Tidings from the Baumgartners. Okay, many of you have. It's not unlike the Christmas letters.
Oh, really?
Kind of, as like a device to get you through the book, you know?
Yeah.
Different voice, but same idea. And I wondered which one was easier to write, Violet or Fern?
I got so surprised when you said it's not unlike Evergreen Tidings from the Baumgartners, because Violet is so over the top and my godmother actually had the best description of Violet of anyone that I've heard, and she said she's imperious. Violet is highly imperious. And so you scared me for a minute when you said I was like, uh-oh.
Well, she has a sense of right and wrong, which some of your characters also really strongly have.
Yeah, she does, Violet.
And goodness at her heart.
Yeah. Violet was really easy to write. Okay. Yeah, she was a voice that had been formed in my head from a very young age, and I found her delightful to write. It was a little harder to write as Fern, but not terribly, yeah.
Well, something that Fern does is at the very beginning of the book, it gets optioned by like a big star, sort of like the equivalent of a Reese Witherspoon type. And her friends right away are like, wait a second, no, because you included a lot of our personal details in there. And so I was wondering, it made me think of Anne Lamott's quote, "You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." And I just wondered, like, how do you approach that in your writing? Like, do you steal from your real life? Like, are the mean people in this book, there are some pretty mean people, are they based on real people, or where's your boundary?
Oh, where's my boundary? That's a good question. Well, my husband would probably wish my boundary were a little bit further back, because there's a lot. This book is dedicated to him, by the way.
And you mentioned an airplane trip, and I wondered if it was the same airplane trip that you mentioned in the book, the spontaneous trip.
It is.
Well, after you answer that question about your boundary, would you mind telling that story? Because it's really endearing. Okay.
Sure. I don't know where my boundary is. I'm so Minnesota nice that I do pull the punches a lot, which my writing partner, Josh Moling, is right here, and that is his favorite criticism of me. He says, "You're pulling the punches, knock it off." And so he really pushes me to go further, but I don't know. I didn't pull a Fern in this book, and I did get a lot of permission from my friends. And my girlfriends, luckily in real life, were like, "We want to be famous. Let's just go. Let's just put it in the book." And yeah. So, but I don't know. Do you have a line? Because clearly you have to draw on your own life. You write about, Kathleen is a wonderful writer. And she's so funny, and she has such a finesse about for writing about helicopter moms in particular.
Yeah,
And
those are all based on real people.
Yeah, small wonder she's been a teacher for 20-some years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But those people I'm not in touch with and can pretend that I'll never see again. Probably will not, right? So, and they
Right.
won't remember the mean phone call that they made to me that made it into the book. Okay, now the airplane story, please.
Okay, so my husband, who's standing in back and trying to hide, so let's see, when I first met him, oh gosh, how far back do I go with this story? Well, I'm going to tell this story because it's very classic my mother. So I met Chad at a work event in Dublin, Ireland. And his pickup line when we went to the same dinner was, I hear you like the Vikings. Or no, he said, I hear you from Minnesota.
Cool.
Even though, I was living in San Francisco at the time, and he said, I hear you from Minnesota. And I said, yeah. He said, do you like the Vikings? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, how about I get you tickets sometime and we can go together? Chad, how many years was it until you got me tickets? It was 17. Yes. So, but anyway, he won me over regardless, and one of the ways he won me over is I was in town for Christmas one year and hanging out with all these good people over Christmas, and this guy kept inviting me to dinner, and I was like, ugh, he won't leave me alone. And these young women at the time said, you never know, you should go. And I was like, ugh, that's dumb, that's a dumb reason. And then one of them said, free dinner. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good reason. So I went out with him for the free dinner. And then I liked him so much that I ended up paying. And then we ended up spending like the next 3-4 days together, really. And I was flying home and going almost directly from the airport in San Francisco to Lake Tahoe to go skiing with my San Francisco girlfriends and the guy who is Chandler in the book.
Yeah.
And out of the blue, Chad drove me to the airport, and out of the blue, I kind of dared him. I said, too bad you can't go skiing with us in Lake Tahoe. You're welcome to join us if you want. And he was like, are you serious about that? And I said, sure. And he and I are both middle children, so we are both very stubborn. And this was back in the day before you had to like drop people off at the curb. You could go all the way to the gate or whatever. So he got in line with me at the airport, and while he was in line, he called, we both worked for the same company, he called the company travel agency, got a ticket, and didn't fly out. I changed a little bit in the book. He flew out the next morning, and I had to call my girlfriends and say, there's this guy who's going to join us on the ski trip, but I knew it would be good because if they liked him, then that was a good sign, and they did. They approved of him. But yeah, he bought the ticket in line, and would have flown out with me that day, but he said he didn't want to pay for long-term parking. Oh, he's saying no, that's not true.
Well, we get to decide, right?
We get to decide. It is our book.
Yeah. There's a couple more questions I want to ask you about moments in the book, but it might be a good time for you to read a little segment for us, if
Okay.
you're willing to.
Yeah, I'm very happy to. So, okay, as Kathleen and I already described, the book goes back and forth in time with four friends, and the fourth friend is really a combination of people, one of who is here tonight. So this is the beginning of one of those essays, and it's called Fitness in the City and What It Did to Our Feet, from Smart Girls Say Yes by Fern McAllister. Okay. Take it from me, if you're going to adopt a say yes attitude, you'd better take care of your feet. You'll need them to launch yourself into new adventures, to rise tall and be heard by the powers that be, and especially to stand your ground, refusing to cede your territory to those who aim to steal it. Plus, trust me when I say this, you'll look damn well ridiculous trying to pair orthopedic sandals with sequins. Don't ask me how I know. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating when I claim that your feet might just be the secret to your ongoing success, you're most likely a woman in your 20s or 30s, in which case you definitely need to keep reading. To commence our lesson, let's travel back to the 80s when my suburban Milwaukee school district took the scared straight approach to sex ed. To walk into 10th grade health class, yeah, you're all chuckling because you all had the scared straight approach. To walk into health grade 10th class was to surrender oneself to an assault of shock and awe imagery designed to frighten our psyches and neuter our libidos. Old man Sorensen loved to remind us that herpes is forever, kids. But so is plantar fasciitis. And how I wish to heaven above our Dr. Scholl's insoles-wearing teacher would have thought to mention that. Fast forward to the 90s when, in my 20s, I could do just about anything in heels. Walk 1 mile uphill from the BART station to my apartment, or start the night at the Market Street end of the Embarcadero and finish it at Marina Green. I celebrated Halloween in the Castro, dressed as Cher, and didn't take off my 4-inch platform boots to check out the party underway atop Twin Peaks. Like, that is, if you want to go from the bottom of San Francisco to the top of San Francisco, that is the walk from the Castro to Twin Peaks, which is the walk I did in 4-inch platform heels. Yeah,
And a long black wig. I loved it.
Now, as a 40-something-year-old woman, every 6 months, my podiatrist gives me a shot between my toes. I'm not heroin curious. I have a condition called Morton's neuroma that, gone untreated, makes it feel as if someone cut my foot open in the middle of the night and inserted a shard of glass between my 3rd and 4th toe knuckles. Twice a year, Dr. Feelgood fills his syringe with steroids and says, "If I had a nickel for every woman who regrets the shoe choices of her youth." If only I had a nickel for every doctor who's ended an appointment by wishing they had a nickel for every condition with which they diagnosed me. 8 years ago, I showed up at the obstetrician's office wanting to know how I could possibly have gotten pregnant a 3rd time. Never mind that I was still nursing my 8-month-old and on the pill and married to a man who traveled more than I was home.
Autobiographical.
The doctor smiled, shook his head, and said, "If I had a nickel for every woman who got pregnant while on birth control." Excuse me? Perhaps old Mr. Sorensen should have leaned on that little tidbit more heavily in between slideshows of genital warts. I've always wanted to do a reading that highlights genital warts.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten genital warts into a book, but it'll be a new goal of mine. Well, you can hear the voice and you can hear the warmth in that, and the characters are just like that all the way through. And there were just, Gretchen, you're so good at blending like the hilarious and the heartfelt, and there were quite a few heartfelt moments in this because these friends have been together for so long. And I wanted to know a couple things about the friends. First of all, they forgive each other for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And do you feel like friendship depends on forgiveness?
Absolutely.
And is friendship love like an unconditional kind of love in your mind?
If it's going to last, I think it is. Okay. Bethany, who's the inspiration for Andy, put it this way. She hasn't let me go yet, despite the fact that I have not once but twice forgotten her birthday. Twice. And the first time, maybe our friendship was young enough where I could have gotten away with it. But the second time, I was a grown-ass woman, and I had been friends with her for a long, long time. I should have known better. And it's not even that I was so busy that, it just didn't even cross my mind. I had enough time that day to send her a Living Simple article on how to clean your house in 10 minutes a day. So she's waiting for her best friend to wish her happy birthday, and instead she gets this email on how to clean your toilets. And yeah, so I don't know how I deserve the forgiveness that I've been granted in my friendships, but I certainly have been granted a lot, and I try to give it back.
Yeah, the warmth is there in the book, and you can see it. And I did wonder, because we see them in their late 20s, and then we see them at 54. I was wondering if there's anything magic about 54.
No, except that it worked with the timeline, and my editor kept telling me I had the ages wrong with the timeline I wanted to use.
Okay.
Except I'm 53.
Okay.
So it does line up pretty well.
Yeah, it lines up pretty well. I did wonder if they had drifted in and out of each other's lives at all in the interim, because we don't, obviously, it's not 500 pages, so we don't hear about like their 30s and 40s, every moment of their friendship.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Did they?
I think so, particularly because some of us become mothers and some of us don't, and some of us don't by choice and some of us don't by circumstance, and that always, especially in women's relationships, I think has a big effect. And Carolina chooses not to have children, so there were, when kids come along, they just become your entire life for a while, and you can't help it. And so there's some ebb and flow in those relationships, but I think women have a good sense for, who's going to be ride or die with us.
Yeah.
And it just takes, a couple of those moments to know that these are your people.
Yeah, and it was perfect because, like, they're either empty nesters or Andy has, like, an older teen who is the impetus for her kind of big life change. But the timing worked really well. And I actually thought it was really interesting that you the book is sort of framed around one of the characters' daughter's weddings. It starts at her engagement party and kind of ends at her wedding, which I thought was fascinating because, like, the friends do have partners, but the primary relationship in the book is really the friends. So I just thought the juxtaposition of the marriage was really interesting. And what if you did that on purpose, or what you were thinking about framing it around a wedding?
I think I framed it around a wedding for a number of reasons because number one, the woman whose daughter is getting married has just recently gotten divorced, and so it was a real whiplash for her to have to deal with both. I also wanted to put a really problematic mother-in-law in there. My mother-in-law is here tonight, and it's not based on you.
This lady is as intense as Violet.
She is. Yeah. And if my mother-in-law can't clearly see that it's not based on her, then we need to have a long conversation. But yeah, I thought that would be kind of fun. And also I was intrigued by the fact, since all of these people, all of the other women in the book settle down much later in their lives, that Portia, the girl who's getting married, she's really young, she's 23, and it kind of rattles some of the women because they can't conceive of who they were at 23, let alone ready to be married.
Yeah, and I guess it gives them a really good reason to, like, remember what they were like before, which is really important to the book too. There are a couple moments, like, in the back half where you just find yourself tearing up. Like, it's a really lovely story. And one of the characters says at one point that she's making a change because she felt the window in her life to try something new is shrinking.
Yeah.
Which made me really stop and think, like, oh my gosh, like, at what point does the window to try something new stop? What do you think about that? What were you thinking?
Well, they tell you it never closes, right? And then there's always that 80-year-old woman who goes back to college or gets her PhD or whatever. But I feel it closing. Not that I'm never going to try anything new or advance on something new. And my mom has certainly lived 5 different lives, which I admire and respect. But we do, we get tired, or our hips hurt, or like. There's certain things that I think once you get into your, as I like to call it, your fork at 50s, although I don't usually use the word fork, that you sort of begin to accept in terms of, like, your limits. But I don't know if there's if you're really driven to do something, I don't know that it's ever too late.
Mm-hmm. Some of the women in the book have really interesting jobs and high-powered jobs, really busy jobs. And it made me wonder, first of all, I didn't know that you had lived in San Francisco. And I was like, Gretchen, you're an acclaimed Minnesota author.
I know.
Why
I'm
are you
breaking
writing
some
about the
hearts
Bay
with this
Area?
one. I'm breaking some hearts with this one, I know.
Yeah. I'm used to you in solidly Midwestern territory. And this, they never even go to Minnesota.
No, they never
They
even
don't
do.
even talk about it.
But they say they talk about pop. A couple of
Oh,
them
yeah, they say pop.
bond over the fact that they both call soda pop.
But I don't even think you mentioned Minnesota when you said pop.
Yeah, no, the two who bond
No.
over it, one's from Milwaukee and one's from Minneapolis.
Oh,
But that's
okay.
it.
That's it.
That's it.
How did you end up in the Bay Area, and do you feel like a traitor? How much of a traitor do you feel like is what I meant.
I am purely capitalistic, and I wanted to expand my market.
Okay.
No, I went to graduate school in Davis.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's how and then I ended up migrating north to San Francisco. So go Aggies. Yeah, I loved living in California. And when I graduated from St. Olaf, I had grown up, I spent my first 18 months in Chicago, highly formative. But I had lived my entire life in Minnesota and then went to a Minnesota college, and I graduated from St. Olaf and was like, I am getting out.
That's how I felt too, but it didn't happen.
Oh, really? Well, I'm leaving for
I got married at
California in the
23.
morning. You
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
So did you relate to Portia?
Yes, although like I loved Portia. She is like a feminist, like, third wave feminist, whatever. And she stands up to her terrible mother-in-law, and she was just lovely in all the ways. I don't remember really being 23 very well.
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, it worked out okay. But I didn't get to go to the Bay Area.
Yeah. Well, I'm leaving for California morning. You can come with me.
I'll get the ticket, like Chad.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience, and then we'll come back for the game. Okay, so here it is. The book begins with a big purchase. They buy a mattress.
Yes.
And I wondered if you remembered your first big adult purchase.
I bought that mattress. It's still in our guest room. Yeah. My first big adult purchase was the car I bought right after college. Total lemon. It was the worst
What
car
kind of
I
car
ever
was it?
bought. Oh, it was a Ford Escape or whatever ugly, terrible, worst car you could have ever bought. It was that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you ever move back to San Francisco, or if you had to live in another city, which, you wouldn't want to, but if you had to, which city would it be?
Like big city, major city?
You get to decide.
I love Chicago too. I really love Chicago.
You were born there.
I was born there.
First 18 months.
Yep. I don't know if I would move back to San Francisco. It's changed, We do romanticize things
Yes.
in our path.
Yes.
You know what? I'll tell you if I'd move back to San Francisco next week, because I'm going to be there on Friday. But I have friends who still live there, and I'm not jealous.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can go on Instagram Live while you're there and
Okay.
tell us if you would go back.
Okay.
Okay.
I will.
Last question for me, and then you can ask your questions. Who plays you in the movie of your life?
Oh, let's see. Am I young or am I old?
Well, I think it's probably this book. So you could have a Fern at 54 and a Fern at 29 if you want, but they probably use like CGI or whatever they're doing now to computerize you.
To wipe out my wrinkles? I don't know. Who plays me?
Yeah, we're trying to think.
Yeah. Who?
Oh,
Kate Winslet?
It's Kate Winslet.
Oh, I take
Good one, Lisa.
Okay, I've
Yeah.
taken Kate Winslet. Yeah. When I was in college, I was always told that I looked like Debbie Gibson. So.
well, she did go to school.
Debbie Gibson went to St. Olaf.
No, there was a big rumor.
Okay.
There was a big rumor that she was going there.
Okay, awesome. All right, what questions do you have for Gretchen?
Well, I was just going to mention that I grew up in California and moved to Minnesota.
That's true. Okay, so my mom grew up in California and moved to Minnesota. And it's interesting because Fern's daughter makes a decision in this book to leave California and go across the country for college. And Fern and her husband believe it's partly because Fern moved from Wisconsin to California and talks about how that helped shape her as a person. And I think that, when I always told my kids when I think about traveling, my head always goes west. like, you know, I'm a Pacific girl. Mom lived
I
in
lived in the
Hawaii.
South.
Yeah. So I think that affected me too. Yeah. Okay.
Others?
Questions.
Nicole.
Nicole Kronzer, acclaimed Minnesota author and 2-time nominee for the Minnesota Book Award. Please stand up.
I love the title, Gretchen. Did you come up with it or did the marketing team?
I would love to say I came up with it, but my editor did. And I've decided I came up with my first 2 titles.
Kiss Fest 1998.
Yeah, and they loved that one so much. No, for my first 2 books, I came up with the titles, and then my agent came up with the Book Haters Book Club, and my editor came up with this one, and they're better at it.
Wow, but The Kids Are Gonna Ask is a really good title.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great title.
But then what did you call it when you were working on it?
Book 4.
4 books, prolific. What did I say? Prolific and established.
I honestly
Yeah.
did. It went back and forth as book 4, version 2, version 3, and finally my editor was like, we need to name this. So,
Who's next?
Well, how many versions were there? How many drafts do you write?
how many drafts? That's a good question with this one. This one didn't have as many drafts. I mean, there was plenty of editing that went on, but it didn't have as many drafts as the ones in the past. However, there's a reason for that, and part of it was that this book scared me so much, and I needed it. I was so close to it that I was almost bound up in trying to make it the perfect story that finally one day my editor scheduled a Zoom call, and she invited the editorial assistant along, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to be good. And we had to come to Jesus. They were like, you just need to get out of your head and finish the darn story. And they were right. They were right. So,
But also you did it. It's so good. It's so emotional. You really delivered on the premise of the book and the feelings of the book. So I think
Thank
you should
you.
feel awesome about that.
thank you.
A couple other questions.
Yes.
What do you start with
What do I start with?
when you're writing a book?
What I'm writing. I'm known as a character author. Like my books are more character driven than plot driven. And so I tend to have a person in mind, or like that was very true for Baumgartner's. Violet Baumgartner was a real person and she lived in my head for a long time. And then these were real people. The kids were real, and The Kids Are Gonna Ask, which takes place in Brian and Michael's house.
Oh, really?
Yes, their lovely house on Lake of the Isles Parkway.
We're still waiting for Chef Bart to show up.
I know, Chef Bart. Don't we all want Chef Bart? Yeah, it usually starts with people and or characters. Yeah, which Kathleen was going to ask, am I working on anything next? And I haven't found my magical next person yet. So no, I don't. I've been experimenting, but
How do you get it all tied together then?
how do I get it all tied together?
Sorry, is it?
Yeah.
You did. You stuck the landing on this one. I feel like you. Well, the
Lori
wedding
Herzl from
probably
the Star
helped.
Tribune would disagree with you.
I don't.
Screw it. She also said the husbands were all mainly forgettable.
Well, they're not the story.
No, they're not the story.
I don't like Lori Herzl. I mean,
She-
I love her. But
She also said, yeah, exactly. She also said, though, that people will gobble it up and it'll sell a lot of copies. So from her lips to Booksellers' ears.
We'll take it.
But yeah, we'll take it. But how do I tie it all together? I do need a lot of help. I mean, Josh helps me a lot on that. My editor helps me a lot on that. The editorial assistant helped me tie up a huge loose end in this one. I do, Mindy Mejia, also Minnesota Book Award nominated mystery novelist, series writer, yes, who is also here tonight. I know, I love to sing people's praises.
Of course.
Yeah, she likes to talk about plotter or pantser, and you're more of a pantser, right? But you aim to be a plotter. I have forced myself to become a plotter. Like if I don't, it's easier, it's much less frightening for me to face an empty screen if I know at least what I'm trying to accomplish in a certain scene. And I can delete that scene later. It might not end up in the book, but if I have a kernel, I can get moving. So I kind of know before I start a book where it's going to go and what the beats are. And
When you're writing, do your characters ever take you in places where you never expected to go?
Yeah, the question is, when I'm writing, do the characters ever take me in places that I don't expect to go? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And sometimes I have very lively conversations with them about why they need to stop doing that, and they don't seem to care. And they're usually right.
Was there a most difficult character in this book?
Most difficult character in this book?
Somebody who wouldn't do the things that you said.
Yeah, that's a good question. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one question.
Yeah.
How do you come up with the names of your characters?
The names of my characters? Oh, yeah. I'm very intentional about the names of my characters. The names in this one, Fern, for example, Charlotte's Web was one of my
I was
it was one of
gonna
my all-time favorite books, and so I named it after Fern, the girl who befriends, the pig. And yeah, so they usually mean something to me. Yeah. And then actually, a friend of mine who lives in Canada and is my biggest book supporter in Canada. I'm big in Canada. I want a t-shirt. Her last name is Abdallah, and that's Andy's last name. So I throw in Easter eggs sometimes in honor of people who have, meant a lot to me. So that's awesome.
Maybe one more? Okay, well I have one more and then we'll do my game. I wanted to ask about, there's another moment when Carolina says, she has her big realization and she realizes there is no enough. And I had to stop and close the book at that point because I am a gold star amasser.
Yeah.
So,
She's not kidding. She launched her debut book a year and a half after mine came out, and she lapped me within 12 months.
But now we're back. We're back. You're ahead again.
Yeah, but you also work a full-time job. Kathleen is, yes, you are prolific as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you, but there is no enough. That really struck me. What do you think? Is this book enough? Is another book going to be enough? Do you think about enough in your own life?
There's no enough. And it's so frustrating because as much as I tell myself that there's enough, every book that comes out, no matter what the reviews, I have a moment where I just sit and I go, why does everybody hate my book? Yeah, exactly. And there's no number that could be enough. There's no, we just, as human beings, I think we're constantly in search of growth. And so I think it's, to a certain extent, it's a natural human behavior. But also one that if we're not intentional about it, it is damaging.
Yeah, it feels bad, I think.
It feels bad. Yeah.
Okay, that was a low note. Let's bring it up. So here's my game. Now we told you it's based on the year of no, right? And that's a reaction to the year of yes. So the game is yes, no, maybe. And I'll say the thing and you have to say yes, no, maybe. Would you do it? Would you not do it? Would you maybe do it?
Okay, for sure.
Okay.
They're all yes.
Really?
No. No.
Maybe.
I am such a Minnesota girl at heart. I'm all big talk, and then when it comes to it, I'm like, maybe not.
Well, let's start easy. Okay.
Okay.
Minnesota State Fair.
Oh, yes.
Haunted house at the Minnesota State Fair.
Maybe, if my kids wanted to go in.
Okay. Bungee jumping.
Oh, jeez. No.
No. Okay. What about karaoke?
I don't trust that bungee jumping isn't going to kill me.
Well, it probably would,
Yeah.
but not karaoke.
No, karaoke's a definite yes.
What is your song?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a song.
I suggest Hold On by Wilson Phillips.
Okay.
I can really see you doing that. well.
Okay, that will be my song next time.
Okay, stand-up comedy.
Oh man, well, maybe.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think it's my genre.
Okay.
My medium.
Calculus. Dissection, like AP Bio.
Oh, yeah, that would be kind of cool.
Okay. I did wonder, like, if you, because the jobs, like I said, like the tech entrepreneur and the human rights lawyer, I wondered if you wanted to be something else besides you.
I didn't want to be either one of those. Well, I was actually in high tech and management consulting and corporate communications for like 20 years.
Okay.
So yeah, I did have my start in Silicon Valley, and that was great until it wasn't, and then I got out. Yeah.
So Silicon Valley now is a no.
Yeah, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back to corporate life.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about fast food for dinner?
Oh yes.
Deep dish pizza?
Oh yes.
Bagel with cream cheese?
Absolutely.
Snickers from the gas station?
Yes.
Okay. Run a marathon?
I would love to, but I no longer have the hips for it. That is one of my Fork at 50s realizations. It's like, give up on the dream, girl.
Okay, fair enough. Pink, the color. Is it your favorite color, your signature color?
Oh, it's one of my mom always says, you're a pink girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do love it.
Okay. What about Taylor Swift?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Tortured Poets Department?
Okay, so I'm not exactly a Swiftie, but when she comes on the radio, I make a fool of myself and I dance and, hope nobody's looking.
Okay. New Year's resolutions?
Maybe.
Okay. We sort of already asked you this, but write another book.
Maybe. I honestly had a conversation with my agent about a week ago, and I said, "Is this even worth it?" And she said, "Well, that's up to you to decide," which is very diplomatic, but it was also timing. Like, you know what it's like, the couple weeks or a couple months before you launch the book, everything is nerve-wracking, everything is terrible. There's no enough. Like, someone can look you in the eye and say, "I loved it," and you say, "No, you didn't."
Right.
Like, your heart believes, "No, you didn't. You're just telling me that." So I was just going through the freak out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I hope to write another book.
Okay, probably another book. Okay. Anyone have a yes, no, maybe for Gretchen before we go?
My sister likes Norway.
Oh, yeah. Becca wants to know if I'd ever go to Norway. Sure.
Yes, absolutely to Norway. Okay, 2 genre questions, and then we'll let you sign some books. Murder.
I love murder.
Would you do it?
Would I do it? Would I murder? No, I probably wouldn't murder anybody.
Would you murder a character, Mom?
Yeah, I'd murder a character, but I don't write murder. I leave that to Josh.
Okay.
And to Kathleen. Her new book is like a murder comedy.
Yeah, there's some murders in there, but they're not like Josh's murders, if you've read Josh. Or those.
Or
Mindy's
Mindy's
No.
murders, yeah.
What about romance?
Or her murders.
Yes. Oh, yeah, Chad.
Was there ever a version of this book on a bad day between us where I didn't quite make it through the day?
Chad gave me a t-shirt that says, "Be nice to the writer, or she'll put you in her next book and kill you." Oh yeah. Yeah, there have been some scenes that I'll never let you read.
Wow.
But no, I would never murder him. He's very nice.
No, he's great. He took the flight to Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, he's very nice.
Well, I can't wait for everyone to read this book. It's really, really good. I like all your books, and this is my favorite. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so honored that you were here with me
Oh my
tonight.
gosh, it was so great when you asked me. I was so honored too. So thank you.
Okay, can I give you a plug? Okay, so Kathleen's books are wonderful, wonderful. Please pick one up and you'll really get a kick out of it. And I can't wait for your next one, June of 2025. She doesn't have a title yet.
Yes, I do have a title.
Oh, okay.
You tell me what you think.
Okay.
Making Friends Can Be Murder.
Yes. Making friends can be murder. I love it.
My students hated it.
Really?
Yeah. They were like universally like, ugh.
Oh,
And they're like, you need to fight for this title. We like the Sarah Jones Murder Project, which was my suggestion. I also suggested Sarah, Dead Sarah.
I love that one
Like
too.
Duck, Duck, Ray Duck, you know? But
Sarah, dead Sarah. That's going to be, if I get to do another book event with you, that's going to be the game we play.
yeah, that's it. Sarah, Dead Sarah. Anyway, June of 2025. We can come back here and do this again.
Okay.
All right, everyone go buy your book by Gretchen. You're going to love it. Gretchen, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Oh. No. Can I make one plug too? Okay, so we were lucky enough to have the book cover recreated, and if